On February 6, 1820, the ship Elizabeth, nicknamed the Mayflower of Liberia, set sail from New York for the coast of West Africa. On board were 86 free black immigrants and 3 agents from the American Colonization Society. Their mission was to find a suitable location for a settlement where free black Americans could build a new life. When the settlers arrived on the African coast, they drew up a compact, much like the Mayflower Compact of 1620, pledging themselves to the service of God and proposing a civil government under their own leadership. However, the ACS and the federal government, which funded the expedition, had different plans. They did not believe that free blacks were ready for self-government, and for nearly 3 decades, ACS agents would control the colony's civil affairs. The ACS initially established its first colony at Sherbro Island, but yellow fever quickly claimed the lives of more than a quarter of the settlers. After the arrival of additional immigrants from Baltimore, the survivors relocated to Cape Mesurado, a 36-mile-long strip of coastal land near present-day Monrovia. From the outset, the colony faced immense challenges. Indigenous tribes, viewing the settlers as competitors for trade and resources, launched repeated attacks. By 1835, 5 additional colonies had been established by American state colonization societies and the U.S. government. In 1838, these colonies united to form the Commonwealth of Liberia, with Monrovia as its capital. Over the next 6 decades, more than 15,000 black immigrants from America would settle in Liberia. In 1845, Liberia's Colonial Council passed resolutions requesting independence from the ACS. A national referendum followed, with most Liberians voting in favor of independence. On July 26, 1847, representatives of the Liberian people proclaimed the Republic of Liberia, the first independent black republic in Africa. Liberia's constitution provided for an elected president, vice president, House of Representatives, and Senate. It explicitly barred white men from owning land or working independently, except as missionaries or traders, to safeguard Liberia's political and economic independence. Despite its challenges, Liberia became a beacon of hope for many free blacks seeking opportunity and self-determination. Settlers built thriving communities, excelling in trade, agriculture, and professions like law, medicine, and education. By the mid-19th century, Liberia had established itself as a hub of commerce and enterprise. The colony's merchant fleet grew rapidly, with 58 Liberian-owned vessels by 1848 and 139 by 1871. Despite the vision of figures like Paul Coffey, who had dreamed of robust economic ties between free black communities in America and Liberia, no official trading relationships materialized. The absence of a strong black economic class in the United States, coupled with entrenched racial barriers, made it nearly impossible to foster the kind of transatlantic partnership Coffey had envisioned. Instead, Liberia's growth remained largely self-reliant, a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of its settlers, even as they navigated the challenges of building a new society in the face of isolation and limited resources. Even though the settlers started to see much progress, their relationship with the indigenous population remained fraught. The Americo-Liberians, many of whom had been born free or emancipated, viewed themselves as culturally superior to the indigenous tribes. They reproduced the social hierarchies of the American South, with mulattoes often occupying the upper echelons of society, and recaptured Africans, those rescued from slave ships, at the bottom. Edward Wilmot Blyden, often regarded as the father of Pan-Africanism, was one of the most influential figures in the 19th century African diaspora. His work as an intellectual, educator, and political leader shaped the ideological foundations of black nationalism and the Back to Africa movement. Blyden's vision for Liberia was deeply rooted in his belief that Africa was destined for a spiritual and political revival, a concept he called Ethiopianism. Central to Blyden's philosophy was the interpretation of Psalm 68:31. "Princes shall come out of Egypt, and Ethiopia shall soon stretch out her hands unto God." Blyden saw this verse as a divine prophecy foretelling Africa's rise to greatness. He believed that Africa, as a spiritual and cultural homeland, would experience a sudden and dramatic transformation, leading to the establishment of a new African civilization. This idea, known as Ethiopianism, became a cornerstone of early Black political thought and abolitionist writing. Blyden meticulously studied the Bible in its original Hebrew to understand the true meaning of this prophecy. He argued that the phrase, "shall soon stretch out," referred not to the timing of the action, but to its manner, suggesting that Africa's transformation would be sudden and profound. He believed that the African people, as a spiritual race, would undergo a great conversion to God, leading to the rise of a new African civilization. Blyden's Ethiopianism was not just a theological concept, but also a call to action. He believed that African Americans and others in the diaspora had a providential role to play in Africa's revival. This belief drove his efforts to recruit African Americans to emigrate to Liberia, where he envisioned a new society free from the oppression of slavery and racism. Blyden traveled extensively throughout the United States in the early 1860s, campaigning for African Americans to emigrate to Liberia. His travels were marked by encounters with the harsh realities of American racism and segregation, which only strengthened his conviction that African Americans would never achieve equality in the U.S. In a letter published in the Liberia Herald, Blyden expressed his frustration with the conditions faced by African Americans. Blyden's recruitment efforts, however, met with limited success. Many African Americans were reluctant to leave the U.S., despite the oppression they faced. Reports of the hardships of pioneer life in Liberia, including disease and high mortality rates, further discouraged potential emigrants. Blyden argued that these challenges were part of the sacrifices necessary to build a new nation, but his message often fell on deaf ears. The fugitive slave laws of 1793 and 1850, along with the Dred Scott decision of 1857, profoundly shaped Black political thought and fueled the rise of Black nationalism and immigration movements. These laws denied African Americans citizenship rights and made it clear that even free Blacks were not safe in the United States. The Fugitive Slave Law of 1850, in particular, required citizens to assist in the capture of runaway slaves and denied alleged fugitives the right to a jury trial, leading to widespread fear and disillusionment among free Blacks. This legal and social oppression led many African Americans to question their future in the United States. Between 1848 and 1861, the number of immigrants to Liberia increased significantly, with nearly 6,000 African Americans making the journey during this period. This wave of immigration was driven by the harsh realities of life in the U.S., as well as the hope of building a new society in Africa. However, the outbreak of the American Civil War in 1861 brought this wave of immigration to a halt. Many African Americans shifted their focus to supporting the Union cause, hoping that a Northern victory would lead to the abolition of slavery and the granting of full citizenship rights. As a result, immigration to Liberia virtually ceased during the war years. While Blyden worked to recruit immigrants and promote Liberia's potential, the country was plagued by internal divisions. The American-Liberian settlers, who were descendants of freed slaves from the United States and the Caribbean, often viewed themselves as culturally and socially superior to the indigenous African population. This sense of superiority was further complicated by the colorism that emerged within the settler community, where lighter-skinned mulattoes, many of whom were of mixed African and European ancestry, held disproportionate power and influence. Blyden was one of the most vocal critics of this internal division. He saw the mulatto elite as a barrier to the progress of Liberia and the broader African race. Blyden believed that the mulattoes, who were often better educated and wealthier due to their connections with white Americans, were more interested in maintaining their own power than in uplifting the Black race or integrating with the indigenous population. This division was institutionalized in Liberian politics, with political parties forming along racial lines: the Whigs, dominated by pure Blacks, and the Republicans, dominated by mulattoes. Edward Wilmot Blyden's life and work were marked by a relentless pursuit of African unity and self-determination. His philosophy of Ethiopianism and his efforts to recruit African Americans to Liberia were driven by a deep belief in Africa's potential for greatness. However, his vision was often at odds with the realities of Liberian society, where internal divisions and external pressures threatened the young republic's survival. By the end of the 19th century, Liberia found itself at a crossroads, caught between the aspirations of its people and the realities of a rapidly changing world. Blyden's legacy, however, endured, inspiring future generations of Pan-Africanists and Black nationalists to continue the struggle for African unity and independence. While internal divisions plagued Liberia, the country also faced significant external pressures as European powers began to carve up the African continent during the scramble for Africa. Liberia's independence and sovereignty were constantly under threat from European imperial powers, particularly Britain and France, who sought to expand their territories in West Africa. Liberia's claims to its hinterland were often disputed, and the country struggled to assert its jurisdiction over territories that were not effectively settled by Liberians. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, which formalized the rules for the partition of Africa among European powers, further complicated Liberia's position. The conference established the principle of effective occupation, which meant that European powers would only recognize territorial claims if they were backed by actual control and settlement. Liberia, with its limited resources and internal divisions, was ill-equipped to meet this standard, and its claims to vast territories in the interior were increasingly ignored by European powers. Liberia's territorial boundaries were once far more expansive than they are today. At its height, the colony claimed vast stretches of land along the West African coast, including areas rich in resources like palm oil and rubber. However, during the scramble for Africa, European powers like Britain and France aggressively expanded their colonial holdings, often at Liberia's expense. To the northwest, Britain annexed the Galenas territory and parts of the Mano River region, which are now part of modern-day Sierra Leone. To the east and north, France claimed the Kavala River region, now part of Ivory Coast, and the Nunes River region, now part of Guinea. European powers justified these encroachments by arguing that Liberia lacked effective control over these territories, a critique rooted in both geopolitical ambition and racial prejudice. By the early 20th century, Liberia's borders had been significantly reduced, leaving the nation surrounded by British and French colonies. This territorial loss was not just a blow to Liberia's geographic size, but also a stark reminder of its precarious position as one of the few independent nations in a continent increasingly dominated by European empires. The country's inability to effectively occupy and administer its hinterland left it vulnerable to European encroachment. Liberia's lack of military and economic power made it difficult to resist these incursions. The republic's survival depended on its ability to navigate the complex politics of European imperialism while maintaining its independence. By the end of the 19th century, Liberia stood at a crossroads, embodying both the promise and the contradictions of Black self-determination. Internally, the nation was fractured by racial and social tensions, with the mulatto elite clinging to power, while the broader Black population, both settlers and indigenous communities, struggled for representation and equality. Externally, Liberia faced the relentless pressures of European imperialism as the scramble for Africa threatened to engulf the small republic. Yet, against all odds, Liberia joined Ethiopia as one of only 2 African nations to maintain its independence during this era of colonial expansion. This remarkable achievement underscored the resilience and determination of Black people to carve out a space of their own in a world dominated by colonial powers. Thanks for watching. If you found this story insightful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue uncovering the hidden truths of history. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.
No fear, no doubt, trust in the Lord. Cut away, make your heart restore. Heavy load we carry long, but His light go make us strong. No more running, no disguise. Circumcise your heart, arise. No be strength, no be might. Now His hand they show the light. Step by step we hold on tight. Faith go guide us through the night. No wahala we go day. No fear, no shake. Faith go guide us through the night. santan Pine chutai koma de nad Pine sente bebe bishan Tap toke meet this ran No mamani no bishan Ke keep on a book kena kwa No mamanji de dila Ke pishoni brother man My beru Oh, Vibekele, no fear, no doubt, trust in the Lord. Cut away, make your heart restore. Heavy load we carry long, but His light go make us strong. No more running, no disguise. Circumcise your heart, arise. No be strength, no be might. Now His hand they show the light. Step by step we hold on tight. Faith go guide us through the night. Hey, no wahala we go there.